Hey there, beautiful souls. I'm Colleen Lockoff.
And I'm Meredith Lockoff.
And welcome to Spiritual Sisters with Sass, the podcast where two sisters with a passion for spirituality and a touch of sass come together to explore the exciting world of self-improvement.
That's right, Colleen. We embarked on this incredible journey together, diving into different self-improvement techniques, yoga practices, and a whole array of life experiences.
Yeah, and through it all, we've managed to create lives that are abundant, happy, and constantly evolving. It's been a wild ride, hasn't it, Meredith?
You bet, sis. We've got two very different perspectives on life, but that's what makes this podcast so special. I'm all about diving in head first into life's adventures and embracing every challenge with a bit of sass. While Colleen here, she's got her own unique approach.
Yep, that's me. And I'm all about the yoga, mindfulness, and finding my zen. And together we make the perfect balance.
So whether you're looking for some wisdom, a few laughs, or just some heartfelt stories, you're in the right place. We're here to share our personal experiences and insights with you, all while exploring the wild and diverse world of self-improvement.
So grab your headphones and get ready for a fantastic journey with us. Spiritual Sisters with Sass is here to uplift, inspire, and keep it real.
Thanks for tuning in, lovely listeners. Let's dive in.
Spirit and sass. Here we go.
The book that I'm reading right now is called Eastern Body, Western Mind. And it goes through each of the chakras and our development of ourselves. And this hit me today. One of the things that I struggle with a lot is believing that I'm kind of a piece of poo. Like, I have had such low self-esteem that I felt that I'm not good enough. And we've talked about it a lot on here, right? And one of the things I've struggled with over the last little bit is wondering, like, how did I get to this point? Like, as a kid, I definitely wasn't like this. And as I grew older, like, somehow I just shut myself down more and more and more and more. And it doesn't feel cool for me anymore. So today I'm reading my book, and this comes up around third chakra development. So this is your solar plexus. Now, what are the chakras? I'll do a brief intro. We have these 7 wheels of spinning energy within us that 10,000 years ago, these gurus decided, like, oh my gosh, this is where energy pools. And in medical science now, we see that where the chakras are, especially the main ones, there's actually plexuses of nerves that come together. So when we're talking about the solar plexus chakra, we're also looking at our solar plexus. And that's like our mesentery, like within, that's where your gut-brain connection is. That's where, like, there's so much right where your solar plexus is, where nerves come together and speak directly to the brain. So that chakra is related to, according to Anadea Judith, it's related to our energy, our activity, our autonomy, our authority, our individuation, our self-esteem, our shame, our proactivity, and our power. Okay. And this is science-based yoga, not etherical, bullshit-based yoga. I say that with kindness and love. A lot of people that I've gone to don't have an actual understanding of science or how these things actually relate to our body, or how the gurus from 10,000 years ago didn't have microscopes or antibiotics or medical degrees. And so this is the way they explain things, right? They didn't cut people open because that's desecration of a body. So growing, right, the developmental formation at the third chakra happens between 1.5 years and 4 years old. So what hit me when I was reading this kind of blew my mind a little bit. The idea, the nervous system is wiring patterns, right? And when it gets to the solar plexus at 1.5 to 4 years old, this is really wiring the patterns around holding on and letting go. Where does this come from? The idea is that within this time, we're developing our autonomy, we're developing our language, we're developing our impulse control, we're developing the mastery of holding on and letting go. We are toilet training. We are learning self-definition. And our needs and issues are appropriate discipline, supportive autonomy, confidence and encouragement, and play. Okay, that's happening when we're 1.5 and 4 years old. I'm getting to it, I promise, I promise, I promise. So when we look at Erik Erikson's psychosocial stages of development, what this does is this takes us to like something I learned in nursing, was the psychosocial stages of development. We've talked about it before because root chakra is your initial learning and it's your foundation. And it is around trust versus mistrust. So you cry and mom either, fixes what's bothering you and you learn that you can trust other people, or you cry and mom doesn't fix what's bothering you and you learn you can't trust other people. Okay. So this is the potty training era. This blew my mind. Erikson's stage is autonomy versus shame and doubt. So I'm going to read this passage and then we can dive into it. So it's sad. It's sad, I think, for us, because we were of a generation in which we were punished for things that we do. So if one is shamed for messing oneself or is toilet trained too soon, then letting go becomes fused with shame. One feels that what is within them is somehow bad and must be controlled and withheld at times. If one is invaded or forced to let go against natural timing, as through enemas or performance on schedule, then holding on becomes an act of defiance and letting go an act of submission. These fundamental energetic expressions are no longer part of emerging autonomy, but are dictated by the authority figure. Holding on and letting go become externally regulated. We become ruled by others, even on the level of our own muscular response, and we move away from our own spontaneity and lose some of our vitality and joy. If the child's innate sense of timing is respected and supported, however, then she learns to trust her own inner control over her bodily expression, literally and figuratively, and the result is self-confidence. So, where my head went this morning was like, oh my God, no wonder I think something is wrong with me. I'm trying to think of how I potty trained my kids. I know how I was taught to potty train a dog. And if you shit in the house, your nose goes in the poo and then you're spanked. Now, I know that that's not the way to train a dog now, but that is essentially like how I was taught to train a dog. And so I imagine that my own potty training wasn't probably far from that. Not that I'm blaming anyone. And I imagine I maybe didn't always exert like the most positive response if a child pooed themselves. Like I'm thinking about my youngest. For some time, she peed in her sister's room, like in a corner. I don't know why. And then I went away and then everybody was like, it's because you went away. But she started doing it before I went away for a nursing practicum. So she got in trouble for letting go. And you think about potty training usually has you put a child on a schedule. So holding on and letting go, and how you do anything is how you do everything. These two key important not only physical, but internal practices were developed when you were a year and a half. How's this landing for you? What's going through your head?
Um, okay. Are you open to what I actually like what I'm thinking?
I don't know. Go for it.
Um, okay, so there's a couple things. One, I'm seeing my own for sure in potty training Caden. Um, just wow at the moment because he started his potty training early because of the fact that he would sit with his dad while his dad was on the shitter. And, all of a sudden he's peeing and pooing in the potty because of this, which then I went straight into, well, he's ready. He was only 19 months old. And then when we'd be standing, or he'd be standing, we'd be watching TV or he'd be playing or whatever, and he'd just be standing there and he'd pee himself. I remember getting upset. And like, I know I would do things very differently now. I can only apologize for the unhealed version of myself back then. But it's very like holy shitish. Okay, first of all. Second of all, just because of the things that we are going through, you and I find it very interesting that you went to her instead of to you. But I think we should discuss that on another podcast. So let's, instead of talking about her, let's go into you in this.
Well, that was like that was the initial. No wonder, because that's how I started the podcast too. No wonder I've always thought so lowly of myself.
Yeah, like I'm listening to you explain that and I'm like, holy shit. Like there was a couple of pieces in there. I was like, oh my God, that's how come she doesn't open her mouth. That's how come of this. That's how come that. So that piece for me is very, like, very real. Like, holy shit, just from that night, I don't remember our potty training. Like, I don't remember that far back. I don't think our kids do either. And I'm just gonna say thank God
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
that. But like it's just so interesting that something so I don't want to say minor because it's not minor, but it is minor, has such a huge impact on who we become as we get older. So clearly it's not minor because of the impact that it has. But as we're raising our children, it seems like you know what I mean? Like it there's such a combination of it being this big deal and this not a big deal. Like, potty train when you potty train. My youngest potty trained when she potty trained. I didn't even potty train her. She came home one time and was potty trained. Like I had tried potty training her and it was not working. And so I just was like, I'll let her do it. And she was 2.5. And I was just like, geez, this kid is taking forever. Also, preemie. So they had told me she'd be delayed. She's not. She just chose she wasn't potty training at that time. And I couldn't fight with her because I felt like I had fought with Kaden and I didn't want to have that similar dynamic. And then I said to her dad, hey, I can't get her to potty train. And he was like, okay. And then he brought her home and she was potty trained. And he said it wasn't hard. It wasn't a big deal. My kid is like my youngest is like me in that sense. She just like lets her rip, says what she wants, says what she feels. So I find it really interesting that you're reading this book and going through what you're going through right now with the people pleasing and all of the experiences that this is all surfacing as well. So what I would like to ask is, can you tell us more about how you see how it has affected you in your life?
Yeah, I mean, the big thing this morning was an answer to the question, like, why? Why and where would I ever think that there's something wrong with me? Like, why have I always just like hated everything about myself? And so it seems like if I would get in trouble for pooing or even peeing, really, that's something that I have nothing to do with that's inside of me. And if I let it out, I'm sure it wasn't like the best. I think anyone that's a Gen Xer had similar experiences to like the idea of how to raise a kid, right? I mean, drink out of a hose, don't be in the fucking, or don't, I don't want to swear because I'm on Insight Timer, but don't be in the house, or, I'll give you something to do, like raise yourself. And then like what in there they talk about a Bible quote that's like spare the rod, lose the child. So basically it says like, well, it's interpreted hit your kids. But the idea is not, it's more discipline, which also is important. If you don't discipline your child, then that wreaks havoc on the other side of things. But if you over discipline your child, then they'll think something's inherently wrong with them. And so it's like, well, yeah.
There's no winning here. I feel like as parents, you are here to traumatize your children so that they can heal from that trauma.
So how are you going to traumatize your child? Because one of the things that I work with a lot is people that had great childhoods.
Yeah.
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 And they have this guilt. And so I always talk about the trauma of non-trauma, right? Because there's still
Yes.
trauma, but I think that they do not want to dive into it because it means looking at things that their parents did that essentially caused issues. But like it doesn't make them bad. It just is. So I speak to this all the time because regardless, people are gonna have issues. Like they made their own story based off of an ego that is there to protect them. But then they identified as that ego and then grew up to think they were the ego. And that's the problem. Essentially, that's the problem. And it's not a new problem. It's been a problem for well over 10,000 years, as we're aware of, because these teachings are very old. Yet at the same time, that's the thing is like people that had good upbringings, they can look at me and say like, oh, I understand why you're so messed up. You have an excuse. And they're messed up too, and they don't have an excuse for it. So it's the trauma of non-trauma, really.
Which Tony Robbins even gets into that I'm sure you remember in the video where he talks to the I'm not your guru video, and he says to the lady, she's with that guy and she's like, I just don't know, and all the things, and she was like, he was like, tell me about your dad, and she was like, my dad was the most amazing person, blah 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 blah, I had the best childhood, all the things, and Tony looked at her and said, no man will ever be good enough for you because your dad was perfect. So there's the trauma of non-trauma,
Right.
right? Like,
Exactly. Exactly. Because most people probably weren't raised like that dad.
yeah,
Yeah. So, that's such a young age to be coming to this wiring of the nervous system of how I emote. Like, cut me open and show me my emotions. You can't, but
no.
like go to any therapist, healer, anything, and what am I supposed to do? I'm supposed to release my emotions. So I'm supposed to get them out of my body. I mean,
But you can't show me where they are.
right. I can't like dissect them and then put them on a tray and show you what they look like. Yet what I can do with the idea or the concept of manifestation is show you what happens to your body over time based on repressed
Emotions that were not
emotion
released. Yes.
causes issue with the nervous system, which causes disease, chronic fatigue, tension, and injuries. So
Stress
no
kills,
wonder.
literally.
Yeah. I mean, no wonder conscious parenting is such a thing right now because we're becoming aware of these things that are so ingrained. But the reality is, like, I just want to know, even 30 years from now, what this generation is going to be like because the
Agreed.
process is ever evolving. But I don't think it comes to a place of a bunch of spiritually enlightened people. But maybe it does because that also is one of the things that's spoken about in the evolution or the continuance of human evolution is that we become enlightened and then we become power hungry and then we start to destroy and then something happens that brings us back to enlightenment. So we have to suffer a lot to come to that place. So I also wonder, because I also think that giving everybody a badge has created, like a participation medal, has created a bunch of entitled little brats too.
Yep.
Not that
Yes.
everybody's entitled little brats, but it's pretty interesting the difference between the generations.
Agreed. Agreed. And it's super interesting because I love the concept of, of this conscious parenting. I love that we're communicating with our children and things like that. But I also see the benefits of consistency and discipline in my own kids. And, now my kids are 21 and 22 and multiple times have come home. And Caden at one point made a joke and was like, I'm so glad you abused me. And I was like, hold up, we're not doing that. I never abused you. And he was like, not physically. He's like, but like, I thought you were such a jerk. He's like, and yet today I'm more prepared than any of my friends. I'm further ahead in life than any of my friends. Like, Brooke will come to me and be like, oh, my best friend's complaining about her dad, and he'd say, we're taking your phone away for 2 weeks, and 2 days later she'd have her phone.
Mhm.
And yet you would say, if you were taking my phone away, it was gone for 2 weeks, and it was actually gone for 2 weeks. When you emptied my room of all my toys, they were gone for the period that you told me they were going to be gone for. And so they both thank me for that. And I have to say, it's so nice to be thanked for the consistency, but also we have conscious conversations around where I also, traumatize them, where I would come home from work, one, hungry, two, stressed out, all the things. And then, I'd walk in the house and would have done nothing or whatever the case is. And then I freak out. And I'm that parent that walks in the door and loses my mind only to try to make up for it later, which you can't do. That's like throwing a plate on the ground, it breaking, and then you being like, oh, sorry. Oh, look, the plate didn't magically put itself back together. So there's trauma we have to work through. And there's also the healing and the benefits of what I see with them as well. So it's
Well,
going to be interesting to see the outcome.
I mean, the idea here is that the development of discipline is also the third chakra. Our solar plexus is our will and our discipline. And so if we weren't disciplined in a way that it was actually disciplined, because I had a best friend that was the same thing. She was grounded for a week, but then it was never spoken about ever again.
Yeah.
And she like craved it. It was weird. She'd be like, of course, she didn't want it in the moment that she wanted to go out, but she would say, I wish my parents would just like stick to what they say. So you learn your own discipline through that. But
Well,
also,
and that feels like with ours, the discipline would be, that we were grounded. I wasn't quite like you, so I wouldn't fight it. But you knew if you fought hard enough, she'd just kick you out and that you'd be fine the next day. So there was such inconsistency. You knew how to get what you wanted anyways. And at the same time as there being that side of it, there was also the abuse side of it. So it was very inconsistent.
we also, when I've been talking about this all day, funny enough, since the yoga class this morning into the mastermind and now is like also, nowadays is speak about nervous system discharge and like somatic practices, and there's so much going around the nervous system, but the reality is that, like, first and foremost, trauma. The definition of trauma is not what happened to you. It's what you did with what happened to you. So it's your processing, because trauma happens. Like, that's to live is to have trauma, because
Mhm.
you probably almost die a few times in your life, minimum, right? Like, you get sick, or you almost drown, or almost get hit by a car, or, something happens to you. Now, that's what the nervous system is really made for. But nowadays, it seems like people don't put themselves into uncomfortable situations at all, which is
Yeah.
why ice baths have become such a great mental health practice, is because you're actually putting yourself in. I mean, your body feels 1 degree Celsius water and it knows I could die. And so you activate the nervous system, but then you breathe calmly through it. you're not, if you didn't do that and it was just like, oh my God, I'm gonna die. And then you get out, there's trauma. So how you process the situations is actually trauma, not what actually happens to you. So nowadays, what's happening is like nervous systems. There's even a trend on TikTok, my daughter was telling me today, that is comparison of my nervous system feels like I'm held at gunpoint when blank. And so one of the ones was like when someone comments a negative comment on Instagram. Like that's compared to being held by gunpoint. That's pretty interesting. So, this idea of like not putting ourselves into discomfort is an issue because then we start to create anxiety about everything.
And we can't regulate it when it does go into that state
Right?
at all. And I think that's probably, again, it, because now you're allowing this trauma instead of moving through it as it's happening.
Right. Like, and then if we talk about now just moving into the body, autoimmune disorders. Okay, autoimmune disorders, there's a theory because there's no known reason why there are autoimmune disorders, why there are major influxes in Lyme disease, why there is major influxes in lupus and fibromyalgia. And there's a theory, and it's called the sterile environment theory. And so basically, you're a caveman, your nervous system tells you like eating is good, right?
Dying is bad.
That feels good in my tummy. And then petting a saber-toothed tiger, that's bad. So great. It kept you alive. Like if you got an infection, you could die. Nowadays, I mean, you still could die, but the chances are so unlikely. Like you just take some antibiotics or maybe you need IV or whatever, but it's like, it's way lower than back in the day. So when we are no longer having to like battle every single thing in our environment to be alive, then the body actually starts to attack itself because the nervous system is meant to work. And it's not put to work now because we're spoiled brats, like first world problems.
Yeah. Which is why third world problems don't have immune system problems like you've told me before.
Exactly. Autoimmune isn't really in the third world or the developing world because they still
have real worries.
Raped to go and get water. See, now that I think is you said they have real worries. And the reality is we all have real worries. But we have so many real worries that are actually not life-threatening that our nervous system takes as life-threatening. And so then it will attack itself. It's like it's not attacking white blood cell, or it's not bringing white blood cells to attack a foreign body. It's actually bringing white blood cells to attack your own joints, aka rheumatoid arthritis.
Yes. So interesting, hey? Just how the difference, like the stresses that we consider stresses now compared to the stresses that we actually faced back then. Like, and this saber-tooth tiger thing comes up a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Where they're like, well, this was meant for you to not die. And now because you're not at risk of dying all the time. And it was funny because you said that about, how you respond to trauma. And on my way home from dropping you off at the airport, Brooke and I almost died. We didn't actually almost die, but it was probably in the 20 years of me living in Kamloops. It was probably one of the scariest drives home I've ever had in 20 years. It was that scary. And we were driving and I was like, oh, it's getting pretty slippery. Like, wow, look at this. And then there's a car that was just like mine, but it's the newer version. And I was like, ooh, I like the back of it. Like, and I made a comment about it. And then all of a sudden my car is sliding sideways towards it. And Brooke's like, it was actually really funny because she had her leg up on the door and she was just kind of chilling there. And as we start sliding, I'm like, my body goes, I got this hot sensation that went through my entire body, both hands on the steering wheel. And I just started like slowly correcting. And it was literally like this much, even though I'm sliding like this. Now, the guy that saw me sliding in this car clearly went into survival mode because he hit the brakes. which is the stupidest thing you could do when someone is sliding towards you, because now I'm probably going to hit you. But Brooke's in the car, and she's just like, huh. Literally, she said, oh, fuck. Literally, like that. Not in a panic, not freaking out. My body felt the adrenaline hit hard. Immediately, I got us straightened out and was like, whew, wow. I just felt like this hot flash go through my entire body. And she's like, it was so interesting, Mama. I thought, huh, we might die. And then just let it go. She was like, it wasn't, I didn't move my leg. I didn't panic. I didn't anything. I just had this thought of, ah, shit, we might die. And like, what an interesting reaction, because in that situation, it's not that we pretty unlikely we're going to die because the car that I have is the safest cars they make in the world. But that was scary. Like, we could have had an accident and been severely hurt. And it's just really interesting because our nervous system, whether it's almost a car accident, an actual car accident, you having the conversation you had with me, my body immediately goes to, oh my God, I might die. Or, oh my God, I shouldn't be here. I should just be dead. That's what our nervous system tries to tell you. And then you have to like take some breaths and refocus, because the nervous system is like, well, you should just be dead then. Like, I worked with a coach and he was like, you're not allowed to say, well, I should just be dead then. And I was like, why would I say that? Like, I don't have suicidal ideology. Like, that's not who I am. And he was like, you'll see. And we start digging into it. And he's like, hey, go deeper, go deeper, go deeper. And like at the fifth level of deeper, it was like, well, why am I even here? And I was like, whoa, why did that happen? He's like, you're close now, go deeper. And so I find if you're at that stage where you actually feel like, oh my God, I should just die, you're really close to finding out what's really going on, because that's like the step before your body or before your nervous system allows you to really see what's actually happening. So it's just such an interesting thing, because like that wasn't the only almost accident we had on our way home, and they had closed the one highway, so we ended up taking the other highway, and the other highway was dangerous. Like the whole ride home, I was shoulders up, I was tense, two hands on the steering wheel. Like, it was a scary drive. And then that could have turned into so much more. That could have turned into, like many people will have an accident and then I'm never driving again. And for me, I didn't go there with it, but it was just like, oh, wow. Huh. In 20 years, this is probably one of the scariest drives I've had to do. So it's just really interesting to me.
Yeah. I mean, the nervous system is amazing.
Really is.
Feels like a close. Feels like we've come to a conclusion. Well, Jim Marshall, thanks for not being.
I mean, we're probably more fun by ourselves anyways, so.
Yeah, so I want to thank everyone for joining us, and we'll see you again in a couple weeks.
Bye, guys.
Thank you for joining us on this spirited journey today.
We hope you enjoyed diving into the world of self-improvement with us. Two sisters who found their own unique paths.
Remember, life is a tapestry of experiences, and it's how we embrace them that makes all the difference.
So whether you're on your yoga mat, exploring mindfulness, or simply navigating life's twists and turns, always keep that spirit and sass alive.
We are Colin and Nerdy Locked Up, and we're here to remind you that happiness and abundance are within reach.
Stay connected with us on social media and keep those questions and stories coming. We love hearing from you.
Until next time, beautiful souls, keep doing the work, keep sharing your experiences, and keep living a life that's authentically you.
And never forget to add a little extra sass to your day.
Spirit and sass, always.